Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be talking about the water Pokemon in Genetic Apex in Pokemon TCG Pocket as well. It's the same set of cards. And these cards and this type is definitely a type that is, historically in the Pokemon TCG, water type is one of the cooler and more interesting types. And like a solid type, certainly. I don't know if it's like on the strongest side, but certainly a solid side. And water is also, I think, cool in Pokemon TCG Pocket. I've heard that some of these cards are like super good. I don't know. The Greninja, I think, is like the Greninja. Since I saw it at the very beginning, I believe it was one of the earliest cards field from Pokemon TCG Pocket. I was like, this seems like a really cool card. And then there's some other strong cards as well. I believe some of the EXs are like quite strong. I think the Vaporeon, like that, like seems good as well. But we'll get to those. So we have to talk about Misty first, right? Misty is a supporter and it is only interacting with the water type Pokemon. And it says choose one of your water type Pokemon and flip a coin until you get tails. For each heads, take a water energy from your energy zone and attach it to that Pokemon. I'm not a big fan of the card design in this card with like the randomness, but if you do flip heads, it is a huge deal. If you flip multiple, that's insane. But if you just flip one, that is still very good. You can play two Misties. You should be playing two Misties in every water deck. I assume. I don't know. Well, okay, if you're playing like I imagine you could play like Greninja with like some other non-water Pokemon, but that could cause issues because now you're playing dual type deck. I'm still not actually sure how. I haven't really seen much pocket footage in terms of gameplay, but or anything else for that matter. I've just mostly been looking at like Pokebeach and stuff, but in- like I'm not exactly sure if the energy generation works. If it is like entirely random or if it's like if it alternates. I don't remember. I think I saw it somewhere, but I don't remember what it is. But certainly you will run into some issues playing multi-energy type decks. But yeah, you can play. I've lost my train of thought. I am also like still kind of sick, unfortunately. Not like super, not super sick, but not 100% either. But Greninja here is definitely a cool card, which we'll get to later. But Misty is definitely a card you want to be playing in like every deck, every water deck. It's super strong. Then we'll start off with Blastoise and the Blastoise line, where you have Squirtle and Wartortle. And then you have Blastoise and Blastoise EX with Hydro Pump and Hydro Bazooka. Like, why are these different names? I still think it's kind of weird. But Hydro Pump on Blastoise does 150 or has 150 HP, which is certainly solid, but it's not like absolutely insane. And then you have Hydro Pump, which does 80 for 3. But if it has at least 2 extra water energies attached, it does 60 more. That is certainly very strong. It's not, it's not one-shotting everything, but it is very strong. Is it worth it? I mean, it's hard to pay, I feel like there's not that much water energy acceleration outside of Misty. I mean, there's not that much energy acceleration in general, to be honest. It's just not really a as much of a thing in Pokemon TCG Pocket. I mean, it's not like energy accelerations everywhere in the Pokemon TCG normally, but then it generally is like really good. Um, at least with like items and like abilities and stuff, it's really good in the Pokemon TCG. So even if there's like one card for each type, then it still is very good. So maybe we will see more energy acceleration in the future with Pokemon TCG Pocket. It's definitely a messy thing to get into because energy cost is definitely a way to restrict cards and make sure that they are like balanced. But and we have Blastoise EX 180 HP. You could do 40 for 2, 100 for 3, or 160 for 5. So 160 for 5, again, very expensive. Probably only payable with Misty, that 5 attack cost. But then you are doing obviously more damage, and it might be like allowing you to get some more one shots. But how much does like the Venusaur, for example, have? That one has 160. Okay, and Charizard has 150. Though you will be one shotting it with 5 energy on either Blastoise here. But having the Surf attack is like nice in certain situations, but these cards, um, the big damage is really hard to get to. 100 for 3 or 80 for 3 isn't like terrible, but I feel like there are like higher upside cards and it's not like they're doing anything super special. Comparing it to say the Charizard, which can just like one shot everything or do massive damage for less energy, or for it does less. It's less energy than the five energy of the Hydro Pump, but it's four. But that's like really strong. You have that high upside there, and then with Venusaur you have the like really good healing and tankiness. So with Blastoise you don't get, I feel like, the upside of either of those cards. But then we have Psyduck. Psyduck is a really cool card. This one has, and this is like, I don't know if it's one of my favorite cards, like designs of Pocket. I feel like it is really cool, because I don't know. I don't know if it's like toxic or if it's not that impactful. We'll see once I get my hands on Pocket. When's it coming out? It comes out in like a little under a month now. In like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I don't remember. But Psyduck definitely is one of the cards I want to play a lot, because in like lots of decks, because it's only 10, so it's only one colorless energy. It's a basic, it does 10, and your opponent can't use any supporters from their hand next turn. Supporters can be important. There are lots of good supporters. I mean, there aren't like, I guess there are like some good items too, but supporters can be, they're not as impactful as like standard, but it is still pretty solid, where you can stop like Misty. I was obviously talking about as a very strong supporter, and like I mean, like all these supporters here are like pretty solid. And then you also have Professor's Research as well as the other supporter, which is pretty good. I don't know if Giovanni's that good, but the others like are very good in their respective decks. I don't know if the decks are actually that good, but then like item locking, if you could completely trainer lock, that'd be stronger, obviously. But supporter lock still seems good. Additionally, if you are hitting for weakness, one of the funny things about Pokemon TCG Pocket is, and I've said this before a decent amount of times, because you're doing plus 20 weakness instead of times 2, it's actually like a 3 times multiplier. It's not like it is still just 20 extra damage, but it's only 1 energy of any type on a basic. And so that is quite strong. Also, I did say Psyduck, or I said like Misty should be in a water deck, but if you have Psyduck and it's not a water deck, then you obviously don't want Misty. But then you do have the Golduck, which does do 70 for 2, which is a pretty generic attacker. But it is like, it is there. I don't know. I feel like Golduck and Psyduck, like this seems like weird design choices. Like Psyduck is very clearly this tech attacker. Um, which also, what does tech stand for? Is it technical? I don't know. I like looked it up and I couldn't find it. People just use the word tech as like a Pokemon that you can, or a card. It's used in various things. You can like slot in to help again in certain scenarios, like situationally. But yeah, I don't know. Like there's no like full word that I could think of that like would slot in for the same meaning. But Golduck is not a tech attacker. It is 2 waters, does 70, which is like kind of weird. They're two completely different card designs on an evolution line, which is kind of weird. It's not like they're anti-synergistic or they are synergistic. They're just truly two completely different cards, which is kind of weird. But I want to take a look at the Starmie, Staryu, and Starmie EX next. I guess not really the Staryu, but then the Starmie here and the Starmie EX. Starmie does 40 for 1, has 9 HP. It does have Free Retreat as well. Starmie EX, Evan Toll is like pretty good, doing 90 for 2, and it has Free Retreat, which is like pretty cool. You can retreat between different Starmies. You have 130 HP, which is not that high. I mean, it's like okay, but it's nothing like super special, especially on a 2-point Pokemon here like Starmie EX. But you do have Free Retreat. It is like a lackluster Pokemon in terms of just like it's not like doing anything super splashy or fancy though. But yeah, it is one of the EXs. There are 3 water EXs, I think, which is like a bunch, right? There were also 3 fire. I don't know how many EXs there are, to be honest, but that is still a decent amount. Like, unsurprisingly, water type does get a lot of love. It has a lot of cards. Then let's talk about Gyarados next. Gyarados is a very expensive attacker. Magikarp is like all colorless, but it's pretty terrible, unsurprisingly. Gyarados, though, for 4 waters, discard a random energy from your opponent's active. and do 100, and it is of course a stage 1 with 150 HP. 150 HP is really high. Yes, it is a lot of energy, but if you're able to get it get paying it, it is solid. It's definitely a card. I feel like it's about as good as Blastoise, because you do have, like, in terms of like its attack and its stats, except it's a stage 1, not a stage 2. Of course, Magikarp is really bad, and the previous evolutions do matter if you're not able to. I mean, there's no Pokemon search for evolutions, right? Well, I think there's like that Caterpie for the grass, and there might be some other stuff, but there's not like normal Pokemon search. But then Gyarados here, if you're able to get into play, is really good. But having to play the Magikarp, start that, you might just lose the game or like give up really bad early points because of starting Magikarp, which is obviously really terrible HP there. Next, we have Lapras here. Lapras is another interesting attacker. It also has Hydro Pump, 30 for 1 water. If it has at least 3 waters attached to 70 more, or 3 extra waters attached to 70 more. So 90 for 4. It's not like completely terrible. Certainly, as you do have a good like starting like amount, but when you have 2 and 3 energies, you're not getting any extra value except for the possibility of threatening retreat, with that, and like doing certain things with that, but you're not doing any extra damage with those extra energy attachments, but you still are threatening a pretty solid amount of damage, not like one-shotting everything, but it is solid. And then you can just do 20 as well in the meantime, which is not like terrible. But I feel like committing 4 energy to this Pokemon, presumably like you start it, and then you just attach 4 energies to it over the course of a bunch of turns. I feel like then you just want, like, is that really quite what you're looking for? I'm not exactly sure. Then the Vaporeon is definitely one of my favorite Pokemon from Pokemon TCG Pocket. Again, since it was revealed, I said I like Greninja a lot. I said I also like Vaporeon a lot. And this has its really, really good attack. Bubble Drain, 60 for Water Colorless, and heal 30 from this Pokemon, and it does 130. This is the same amount of healing as on the Venusaur line, I believe. And so they do have higher HP, so they are more tanky in that manner. But if your opponent's attacking into you a bunch of different times, you can heal over and over and over again, and they'll really struggle to knock you out. There are other forms of healing as well, and certainly Grass does have better access to healing in general. But I do believe that Vaporeon, like it seems like it should be strong with the lower damage output in Pokemon TCG Pocket. If you're hitting for smaller amounts of poke damage, not taking one shots, not even necessarily taking 2 shots like all the time, then you can just heal off so much damage from Vaporeon. Then let's talk about the Poliwrath here. Poliwrath, Poliwhirl and Poliwag are both colorless, and Poliwrath isn't. Again, we got this kind of the same weird thing going on as we saw with the Psyduck line, though not to the same degree. But Poliwrath here, it has Mega Punch 80 for 3, but then you also have your ability counterattack if this Pokemon is in the active, and damage, do 20 to the attacking Pokemon, 20 damage. Damage counters, if you didn't know, are not in Pokemon TCG Pocket. Damage counters are one of the weirdest things in the Pokemon TCG that they're not that weird, but they always trip up new players. They're like, it's like damage, but it's not damage, which is just kind of weird. But this is not a thing in Pokemon TCG Pocket. It is just straight up damage, and it's not an attack though, so it's not like Poliwrath. Like if one just attacks, they both just like explode. But yeah, you can get extra damage through that, probably at least take 2 hits. So that's like kind of cool. I don't know if that ability is like any good, but it seems kind of fun. Then we got Tentacool, which does 50 and Poison for Water Colorless. I don't know how much like retreating people are doing in Pokemon TCG Pocket. I feel like that's a really interesting part of the game, even in like the regular Pokemon TCG. But in the regular Pokemon TCG, I feel like it's not like, I don't know. It's not like you're retreating between attackers. That's just not really a thing that happens. I don't know if in Pokemon TCG Pocket, when that like comes out, if I'll be like retreating a lot or not. Like it seems like, I don't know. I'm not really sure, to be honest. But and of course why that matters is if they retreat, they're not poisoned anymore. I'm pretty sure, right? I think I said this before. I'm not sure exactly how special conditions work. I know they work normally, but I don't know if they work the same in Pocket. But assuming they do, if people are just like retreating all the time, then or switching some other way, um, which there aren't really just like normal switch ways. But if they're doing that, then you're gonna have some issues here. So you're not really getting value off of poison, but it is interesting if you are getting a lot of value off of poison. If they're not switching, then it's like 70 for 2, which is very solid. And then if they're like not switching at all, you could potentially just do something even more powerful, and just get insane value off of it. If they're like just like sitting there, they're probably to be an EX, but then you could like two-shot an EX with this through the use of poison, or maybe hit them and then retreat into something that does like say 80 or 100 damage. Then we have Steel and Dugong. 90 for 3. I don't really know if like the stat line seems mediocre. Um, Again, like really generic Pokemon here. There are certainly Pokemon before Pocket came out. A lot of people are wondering how generic the cards would be. A lot of the ones that were revealed seemed very generic. They have been certainly more interesting, I feel like, than some people were expecting. Um, I wasn't really sure exactly what to expect, but they are like generally more interesting. Not like anything super crazy, but there are certainly a decent amount of cards that have interesting effects on them. Nothing like too crazy, but it's not like most Pokemon don't have text on them in effects of attacks or like attack stuff like damage calculation or something like abilities. But Dugong and Seal obviously they don't have that. So yeah. And then you got Shelter, you got Cloister, which takes minus 10 from attacks or 10 less damage. I don't know, like it has 120 HP. How useful is this? Comparing it to something like Vaporeon, which I was obviously talking about before. Yes, you do. Wait, no, how much did Vaporeon do? I think it did. Yeah, it did 60. So you do 10 more. It is a water colorless. I definitely feel like its attack's weaker. The ability is nice if you are getting hit a bunch of times. It is nice, but still, I feel like it's not that much more useful than Vaporeon. I mean, you're still getting one shot by the same amount of stuff as well. Vaporeon is an evolution as well. I didn't really say that, but you could use it with like the Jolteon and the Flareon, but that doesn't really make any sense. They don't work together, unfortunately, which was something I was kind of hoping to see. But yeah, Cloister seems like taking 10 less just isn't that meaningful. Then we got Kingler. Kingler's kind of interesting. 80 if on a double coin flip if both our heads, just 80 more for 3 energy. This definitely feels like something that isn't um, I don't know. It's called KO Crab, but it's not an instant knockout. There's definitely a few things that it misses. I'm pretty sure. So that's kind of weird. But anyways, Kingler is if you get double heads, that's really good. If you're not, it's not like super terrible. It's certainly not anything super good, but the potential is like there. It's not. It's kind of fun. Then you have the Cedra. The Cedra is pretty interesting, as we'll talk about Greninja later, but you do 50 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for 3 water energies. It can be the active as well, but it can be the bench. And this is obviously good because it allows you to target wherever you want. And this can be useful if your opponent's retreating, but it's obviously not very much damage. I mean, it's not like completely terrible, but it's not, for 3 energy on a stage 1, it's not that much damage. But it is definitely a card that could be could be good with like spread or snipe damage. You can really target down what you want and target your opponent's threats. Then we have the Seeking, and Seeking here is kind of interesting with Horn Hazard, 80 for 1 on a coin flip. Obviously, 80 for 1 would be insane, but you have to flip a coin, and if you flip tails, it doesn't do anything. However, if you go with this, you go first. You don't attach. Someone like commented this in the video, which I appreciate. They said because I forgot like about the turn 1 rules. I just like didn't really think about it too much. But you go second, and so or no, you go first, and so you get your energy. You just have one energy, so one energy stage ones are really good. Like that is something that could be, or that is like theoretically really strong. So you can use this early on, and you probably just like one shot stuff, right? Like this is taking stuff out. If it's not, it's like doing just a lot of a good chunk of their health, right? So this could be insane, or it doesn't do anything, right? But if you do flip heads, it could be really strong. Then we have the Omastar. This Omastar is really weird. Well, I don't know. I think it's really weird that Pokemon has fossils in pocket. Like it seems like they're just unnecessary complication. But almost start here, 140 HP, which isn't like super high on a stage two. And Ancient Whirlpool here, Water Colorless, 70, and the defending Pokemon cannot attack next turn. During their next turn. That is pretty insane. If they are like an EX, then you just like well, or anything. I mean, you just attack them until they're knocked out, assuming they can't retreat. They probably will just retreat, but it's not like they can just keep retreating. And if you one-shot them, then the effect doesn't matter. But then you took a prize, or if you knock them out, but you took your prize or your point. So then it's all worth, especially on the 2-point Pokemon. I think this is really where you're looking to use it. And I mean, the EX Pokemon are good from what I've heard. I don't know exactly how good, but they're good. And Star is definitely theoretically really scary. However, it is a fossil. Being a fossil basic doesn't mean you're like super bad. Um, but it's just like kind of awkward. You can't start the basic, but Star is definitely theoretically really strong, but kind of awkward to pull off to an extent as well. And it is still, of course, a stage two. Then we got Articuno here at 100 HP on a coin flip. It paralyzes. There we go. And it does 60 again for 3. This is like okay. The issue, of course, is if they're like paralyzed, they could evolve, and then it's like, well, now what? But if not, it could be really good as a coin flip, but it's all right. Then we kind of sells Articuno EX here. This is I've been told this card's like quite strong as well. And it has 2 attacks. It can do 40 for 2, which is probably the same attack as on Blastoise EX, which is a stage 2, which is like kind of weird. But Articuno EX here, 140 HP. And then for 3, it does Blizzard 80 and 10 to each your points benched Pokemon. That's pretty strong because you're able to do a lot of damage. If your opponent has a bunch of Pokemon in play, you're doing 30 extra damage. You're doing 110 for 3 if they have a full bench. And then you can pair this with something like the Greninja 2, which I'll talk about now, which does 20 damage to one of your points Pokemon with its ability. So that's 20 extra damage in addition to your attack every single turn. Once this Pokemon hits the board, you now put a timer on your opponent saying that you need to win the game before I do all this damage to the Greninja and just win the game. Of course, you're already putting a timer on your opponent just by attacking, but if they're just like healing off your attacking damage, Greninja is going to be adding to that and still applying extra pressure. So Greninja is a card that is definitely what I said one of my favorite cards. And yeah, just applying so much pressure to your opponent's Pokemon because it can hit anywhere, right? It can hit their bench or it can hit their active. And Articuno does not have that. Articuno is going to be like just hitting their active, but well, it's not just hitting their active, but it's mostly just hitting their active. So hitting the bench is very meaningful, especially if you're doing extra damage through Greninja or even something like the Cedra. But then also you do have the issue of like, um, why like you're just mostly doing damage in one spot, so it's mostly like a normal attack for that matter. Then there is the Ducklet and Swannet. These are both all colorless, which can be used to be played into other decks to hit different weaknesses, and they have like solid stat lines though. Nothing like super crazy, specifically the Ducklet's like not that good. But yeah, we got Froakie and Frogadier. They're also both colorless, which is like kind of weird. You could tech Greninja into other decks, but it is a water attacker, so that might not be what you want to do. There's Pikachu. This does do 30 for 1, which is your 30 for 1 grass Pokemon. Then there is Bruxish with not, like, I don't know, Bruxish, I've said this before, it's kind of ugly, but this art, it's not that bad. And then we have, is that the moon in the background? What am I looking at? So second strike, though, Watercolorless 10. If your opponent's active has any damage on it, then it does 60 more damage. That's obviously insane. 70 for 2 is like a lot, but like you need to obviously set this up. But that seems like really strong to me. Obviously, you need to be two-shotting, but like if you're two-shotting anyway, like this is strong. It's not like you're two-shotting by you doing this back to back though. But if you're able to like set up Greninja, then Bruxish Bruxish, there we go. Seems kind of insane. If you hit with something else, like it could be really good. You want to be hitting with something better in the first place. 10 for 2 is obviously terrible, but if you hit for something like okay first, then you swing with Bruxish to finish him off. That could be really strong. Then we do have Snom and Frostmoth. This puts him to sleep. This is very similar to the concepts with Articuno, where this is a paralysis on a coin flip, which is essentially just the same thing as sleep. Theoretically, sleep is better, but it's not that much better because it's like a 25% chance to be better. I mean, theoretically, being asleep into your opponent's turn like is bad, but it doesn't really matter, right? But yeah, anyway, so it does 40 for 2, and you put them to sleep, but then theoretically, if they like stay asleep a really long time, then they are in a really bad spot. But you can't really ever rely on that. But you could put them to sleep and then say like, okay, now you're asleep, you can't do anything, assuming obviously you flip tails, and then now I can like go into some other Pokemon and attack, or of course just annoy your opponent. However, it's not a lot of damage, so this is only really I feel like something you want to be using in a situation where you're saying like, oh, my opponent's doing something really scary, I just need to slow them down or stop them, and is this gonna be enough? I mean, it's not very much damage. It's nothing super strong, but there are definitely some really cool water Pokemon. Also, Frostmoth is weak to metal. Are there any other water Pokemon weak to metal? I feel like no. I wasn't really paying attention to the weakness. I don't really think about it that much, but it looks like that is the only one. Well, okay, and Stomp. But water type definitely has some really fun cards, including Greninja, which I love, and Vaporeon, which I love. I do think these are two really fun cards, and a weird fossil as well. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all that good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.